All right. Well, good evening and welcome to the first neighborhood conversation of 2019. We are here in the Lake Washington School District Headquarters building, and we are also on Facebook Live. So for those who are watching, and are they able to submit questions to that venue? No, not yet. Okay, but right here in my hand is I have questions. But to begin with, my name is John Marshoni. I'm the mayor of Redmond. And next to me here is the city council, and I'd like each of them to introduce themselves.
Good evening, and thanks for coming out. I'm Hank Margerson.
Also, thank you for coming out. I'm Steve Fields.
Hi, I'm Tonica Pavia. Great to see you guys here tonight.
Hey, good evening. I'm Angela Burney. I'm the council president.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Lee Anderson. Happy Bike to Work Month.
Hi, I'm David Carson. I'm the council vice president, and thanks for coming out on a night where you could be doing something else.
I'm Hank Myers. I'm also a council member. I want to thank you for coming out. And just except for this row, who here is not considering running for city council or mayor? Okay, thank you.
So the answer is 4. And so council, there are 2 microphones for y'all to share. And not every council member has to answer every question, because I think there's some you agree on and some you don't. But the purpose is for you guys to just answer as many as you can. So I have not looked at these questions nor put them in any kind of order whatsoever. The first one, but looking at the crowd, this one seems planted. What vision do you see for the future of the teen center? Wonder where that question came from. Mr. Myers, yes, sorry.
I think the teen center is an absolutely marvelous facility, primarily because the teens themselves have taken ownership and equity in it and put into it what you want to have there. There are size limitations. We need to do that. But I think if we can make a first priority of keeping that and making it suitable for the size, that would be my first choice.
Anyone else want to comment?
I think Teen Center was one of the structures that we looked at under our facilities plan, and there's some investments that will be going into the Teen Center. I think it's safe to say when we did that facilities plan, one of the pieces of feedback we heard from, mostly from teens, was they wanted to keep their own teen center. They wanted their safe space. And I think that's my vision as well for the teen center moving forward, is to keep that space available for them. Since the city owns the building, it's up to us to make sure it's well run, well taken care of, and so whatever improvements we need to make to it, then I'm committed to make to it.
Go ahead.
So from a vision perspective, and we heard that there's, it's a great asset for the city, and it's great that we have a place to. But the question was, what do I see as a vision? And your ownership is part of that vision. But what I would like to see is, we need to create leadership for our future, and I think that's a great place to have those kinds of inspiration and those kinds of programs and investment from the city, so that you and I'm looking at you because you all look like teens to me, that we do more than just recreation, that we create that future leadership through a program like that. So thank you.
As a parent of a teenager, I totally understand wanting your own space, and I think you guys have done a fantastic job just really making it your own with the live music that you have and just the great discussions you have over there. But I also see in the vision having other places where you guys can recreate, like maybe a future community center. So you would have your teen center, but you'd also have maybe a great swimming pool or a place to play sports when the weather's not so good, which happens here. So I see it as growing, so it's exciting.
I was pretty much going to say what Ms. Pottigate said. We have great opportunities. The teen center itself is a fantastic place. There's great opportunities there, but there are also opportunities throughout our city. And I think that's really important to recognize that we have a group called Right Pack that's here tonight, but you have a tradition of being really involved in what happens in the city and being part of making things better here, and spreading what you do throughout the city. So I think that to have those opportunities for you to work with the rest of the city and different areas of recreation and other things in the city are also really good opportunities. And so I don't see there being any limit on what you can do, or what we could do with our teen center. I don't think it's bound by the space that it's in. I think there's just some really great things all of you are able to do and the future can do too.
I will echo all of the comments heard and also just say I really appreciated the opportunity to work with, I think, several teens, at least Zach. I remember meeting with Hope Link food drive last year. So there's definitely a lot of different ways that you can get connected to the community, whether that building or center is actually larger, and that just means more opportunities and more teens doing great things for the community. So thank you.
There we go. So I think the one thing that we've committed to is, basically keeping the teen center the way it is and adding facets that you guys want. And I think that is, whether we need to do an expansion at some point, it seems like it's become so popular that that's inevitable. But I do think the more we can add some facets to the teen center that really make it the place you want it to be, I certainly favor that.
So you can see the mayor's suggestion that not all of them have to answer wasn't very influential. So the mayor position is not as important as you might think. Question, what events are planned for the downtown park this year? And follow-up is, will there be conflicts with the Saturday market? I'm going to take that because that's kind of a administration one, but you guys can comment on it afterwards. So in 2019, this is our first full year of having the park open. We're going to have elements of the Bike Bash event in May, 3 nights of So Bazaar. It's going to be both in the corridor and spill into the downtown park also. We have our Redmond lights in December, so we've been able to expand that. But then we also have several, I'll say, private events, not city-sponsored events. Cinco de Mayo, this Sunday, is coming. Big festival, our first Cinco de Mayo festival that I remember in Redmond. A week or 2 weeks ago, there was an event for autism in the downtown park with booths and food trucks and kind of everything you'd want in a festival. And then, will it compete with the Saturday market? I don't think it'll compete with the Saturday market because it'll just enhance being in downtown. You park once, you go buy your vegetables, your fruits, your flowers, your crafts, but you walk 2 blocks the other way, and now you're in a park, whether it's just to sit and have coffee or whether there's an event going on. So I see it as compatible in making our downtown active. And on May 7th, staff is providing an update on the downtown park programming to the City Council. So that'll be a week from Tuesday, will be a more detailed report on what's going on. But between the private sector or nonprofit and what the city's planning on doing, I think the weekends are gonna be full, and there's already a high demand of how we can use that. Any council follow-up? Mr. Carson first, and
Yeah,
we'll
I'll
pass
say,
the microphone
sure will.
down.
So I know that there's going to be a couple of festivals. One called Veg Fest, that's going to be in June, I think. Late June, I think. Yeah, it's late June on Saturday. And then an event that I'm working with a nonprofit on is called Seattle World Whiskey Day, and it'll be in the downtown park in 2 weeks. So, so yeah. No, not you guys. Sorry.
Mr. Fields.
So I'm not sure if the person who wrote that question would provide a clarification. First, I want to say I'm glad that we're getting great use out of the downtown park and the schedule of events. I think it's really exciting. And I really like the idea of this spillover concept of combining our assets into bigger and better programs. But when whoever asked the question about a conflict, I'm wondering if what they meant was, could the Saturday market be located at the downtown park? I don't see a natural conflict. Is there anybody want to
Well,
clarify that?
Wait, do you? Yeah, there was no mention of conflict.
Oh, I thought
as the writer just told us. So he thinks, you feel like you got an answer? Okay, he
Okay,
feels like
great.
you got an answer.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to the next question. Who of you can support the 1% property tax cap? So that's the state property tax cap. Would you support removing the cap? And what is the city's position on the 1% property tax cap? This one you might all want to comment on. Mr. Myers, we'll let you go first.
The 1% property tax increase was put into law by initiative several years ago to limit the amount of your tax increase, particularly if you've been living in your home for a long time. I've lived here for 42 years. A 1% increase in property tax nets the city about $450,000, which is a very small percentage of what our budget is. So if we want to go out and we need to raise $10 million, what we're talking about is a huge increase in property tax. We had $11 million surplus this year. We had an $8 million surplus last year. A few years ago, the city, the limit is 1% or the CPI, whichever is less. And the CPI happened to be 0.92, and the city was even thinking about declaring a financial emergency, which is a legal step you have to take in order to bring it up to 1. So I don't see the need for the money, and I don't see the need for the burden.
So I also think that we need to be able to protect those who are in fixed incomes, and this is a mechanism that does that right now. You basically, you go with the law that you have. So if it gets changed, then, we look at other options for, what that means to the city. But I think we've been able to budget just fine with the 1% cap for the 12 years I've been on council, so.
I don't have a particular position one way or another on this one. I could think about it now, but it would be probably an undeveloped answer, and I'd be happy to think about it and get back to you if you have a question.
Yeah, it's kind of a complicated question. I don't see the legislature taking this up. I don't think at this point it's really a matter of debate. It's something we can't do as a city until the legislature decides that this is some avenue they want to go through. I just don't think it's really part of the debate. I think the legislature is working with other tax issues. Even in this year when they were talking about school funding, this did not come up. So I think until the general public sees a need to raise above 1%, which it could, it does limit our funding for roads. It limits other funding in ways that are have long-term consequences. But until the public sees a need for that and raising those funds, I am having a hard time imagining that will happen.
Thank you. We just went through a budget cycle this past fall, and that was very illuminating for myself, and just to see how do we fund the city. And I found that we did work with the 1% property tax cap. If we got more money, I'm sure that we could put it to great use. But as Ms. Burney said, until that's what the majority of people want and they inform their legislators, I don't think that it's something that's going to change anytime soon. So I think what we do is we budget for what we do have, and then we see if the will of the people decide that a property tax is worth pursuing. Thank you.
So I don't support the 1% limitation. I think the best way to control how much we tax is by who you elect. And you want to elect people who will control spending or do make the right spending and the right investments. When we do that, we kind of mess up other areas. Sales tax has been increasing. That's really hard for people in small businesses. We get levies, ad hoc levies all the time because there's not enough revenue. I happen to have worked at the county during a time when our economy was in a downturn. And the limitation of the I-747 was a real crisis during that time. Our general fund was constantly under stress. So my view is we should have as many options to tax in order to balance equity and fairness across the taxpayer, reasonable options. But I don't think that that automatically translates into city governments that all of a sudden feel like they've got so much money they can just spend it wherever they want. So creating equity and fairness in collecting revenue from our community is really important to me. And that's an option that we should have, and I think the 747 is in fact created a burden across many jurisdictions in our state. Let's remind ourselves, this is not a Redmond law, it's a state law. So that's my take on it.
Well, thank you for the question. It's a very good one. And I would say it has been over the last several years, I don't remember how long it's been, but the last several years, that on Redmond's, the city council's legislative agenda has been review of the 1% cap on property tax limitation. And it's something that we have supported the legislature looking at in terms of whether it should be limited. So I think as a body, we have supported removing the 1% or something. And it might be tied to inflation or some such thing. There are programs that are assisting folks who are older, I'm getting there, and also that may have disabilities, for example, and limited incomes because of that. And so those programs are out there, and so that helps offset some of the impacts of property taxes on those households. It doesn't necessarily solve the sales tax problem that Mr. Fields mentioned. And so as a consequence, we've had to rely on these special votes, and a lot of them are tied to either agreeing to raise your 1%, which is how we have to do things. If there's a need for more revenue at King County, for example, they go out and ask for more money through property tax, and something that we all agree to do. And they're generally speaking, for the most part, semi-successful. They've had some success mostly in the human services area, I would say, especially with police and jails and those sorts of things. I would also say that our surplus that we have enjoyed over the last several years is a result of look around you. We have enjoyed banner years of sales tax on construction. And we know that that eventually will slow. You can't live on something that's not sustainable and build a budget on a non-sustainable revenue source, because you'll end up with a structural imbalance before too long. And as a consequence, with the 1% cap and by living off of unsustainable sales tax revenue, you end up in a situation where a future city council is going to say, why didn't they, and what you fill in the blank for this one. So we've been smart in not using that one time, if you will, leftover money for ongoing operations. We use it for capital investments, things that we need to do, but didn't make it into the budget. We've got something coming up here in a little bit that we might do in terms of property acquisition that we can fund because we had some extra revenue left over at the end of the year. But I think as a council, and like I say, for the longest time as I remember, we have been advocating that the state should allow us to, or at least look at lifting the 1%. Now, we're not advocating a number, we're advocating, hey, study it. And King County, and Mr. Fields is right, has been most negatively impacted by this. And there are many other counties as well and cities throughout the state that have felt the crunch because they're not getting the same level of sales tax revenue from construction that we are.
So, okay.
So, and just to sort of create a couple of examples from what Councilmember Margison was describing, we increased levies at the flood zone control, veterans levy, all kinds of different things. So the taxes were still increased when the need was there. But the 1% limitation actually made those things much more difficult and much more, I would argue, even expensive, because instead of looking at it in a holistic way, we divided it all up. So, thanks.
So a couple things on the property tax real quick is, of the total property tax bill, the city portion is about 12 to 14%. People could get their property tax bill, and whether it's $3,000 or $7,000, how can the city take $7,000? And we explain it's made up of many jurisdictions, state, school district, county, so forth. So when we talk about property tax, we're really only talking about 14% of that, whatever that is. And so when we say we're raising it 1%, it's only on that 14. The other thing I'd like to say is that in 2007, we went to the voters and asked, first of all, our property tax laws are written in a very strange way, and that's the state's fault. Commentary aside, in 2007, we went to the voters and we asked for, I think, 25 cents increase in the property tax for public safety and a 10% increase in property tax for parks maintenance. That was passed in 2007, and we said at the time that the value of that, the purchasing power of that, will fade, because that's just the way the property tax, because it's 1% cap, that's the way it works. And I estimated at the time, and I was on the council, that it would fade after 8 years, so we'd have to go back to the public every 8 years. Well, we've been able to stretch that from 2008 to, it looks like, 2022. So to go above that 1%, the council may decide to put something on the ballot and say, are you willing to restore this back to the 25 cents for public safety or the 10 cents for parks? There might be other ways of doing that. That'll be debated over the next couple of years of what to put on the ballot. But the public in the end has the say over the 1% cap. And so that'll be an interesting conversation when it comes up. The next question in the same handwriting. Ooh, I hope that's not for me. Chip keeps telling me I'm a better door than a window, and I keep having to stay back. Okay, good. The city just spent approximately $100,000 on the new website. Do you think the website is better than the old one? If yes, why? And will the city remove the nauseating inducing clips on the site? The nauseating clips, we have a deal with the seasick medicine people, so we're getting a kickback on that. So we're not going to remove those. But the other questions, council want to comment on what they think of the new website. Do you think it's better, and why? Mr. Carson.
I think the jury's still out. I'm concerned about the search capability still, and we've got some things to fix, but it's going to take a little while before we see the benefits of it. It is not. I think we're just going to have to wait and see, because it's not everything is fully implemented. So I think it's just unfair to say it at this point.
Ms. Burney.
Thanks. So a few things. Are you okay? Do you need some water?
Jill, can we get some water over here, please?
Oh, okay. Sorry. No, I don't. That's yeah. They're not here, though. A couple of things. One, what you see now, if you've gone to the website, is a pretty refined version of where they started. And some of the back-end things that you don't see is that our staff took the time over the last many months to go through every single page that we had stored in our website and culled and got rid of duplicates, got rid of things that were old, got rid of things that were irrelevant, archived everything they needed to. So there's been a cleaning up of everything. It used to be if you went on the old website and searched for something, you could get something from like 2005, and it was not at all relevant to what you wanted to see. So there was a lot of back-end work that went into it. The designers worked throughout the city with all of the different departments to try to figure out what it is they really wanted to put on the website. And they got a lot of public input to figure out what the public wanted to have on the website, how the public wanted to use the website. They went through some really robust testing on it as well. I personally think it's much cleaner, it's much easier to use. You can type right in the search bar and what you need comes up. I think there's a learning curve if you're used to using the old site, that once you figured out where something was, you knew where to go for it. So if you knew that, that's hard to get over, but now you can actually search for something and find it. The video that's on there, I think coming up, there'll be a bar that you can select some things for if you need it to be read to you, if you need a bigger font, and all of those things, and you'll be able to stop the video. So if that's troubling to you, then that will soon be one of the things, the accessibility tool will be added. So it's still getting refined and still getting worked on, and the search function is still working, but personally I think it's a much better version of what it should be, and I think it also has the capability of continuing to be updated, which we didn't have with the old system. So I'm actually very pleased with how it turned out.
Mr. Fields.
Thank you. So I actually agree with both Councilmember Carson and Councilmember Burney. The question was, is it better? Absolutely, it's better. It's more intuitive, it's more user-friendly, it looks better. So I would say that interface is much more appealing to me and to my eyes and my brain. But when we were given a presentation a few weeks ago, I asked the question, when do you expect that we can say, hey, we are successful? Because all of these projects, all of these IT projects take time once they go live to actually work out, and as Councilmember Burney said, there's opportunities or there's potential for improvement. And I think what the answer that I remember was 60 days. In my mind, I calculated that to be 120 days because that's the nature of it. So I agree with Councilmember Carson, we still need to wait to make sure. However, it's on us to make sure. And I think the potential is there, and I think people will be really happy and excited about that website.
Ms. Anderson, Councilmember Anderson.
So how many people here have actually built a website before? Yeah, it's going to be all this front row here, right? So building a website is kind of like a farm, right? So there's always work to do. I was astounded to hear how many pages were in the existing website and how it is about 20% as much content now. That still was a huge number as well. So, pruning that amount of content is a huge job, and I know Miss Smith in the back there had a lot of, and her team were really working on it a lot. So much improved for me, the millennial, with the phone. So no video on the phone if you get seasick. The mobile friendly is a lot better. Overall, the layout looks hip. I'm not sure. This is a good fit for government in general. Nobody really thinks about that, but it looks nice. It fits the city, and sort of a new rebranding for the city is healthy. So,
Mr. Murchison?
I would say yes, I like the new website, and for many reasons, but some of which have been mentioned earlier, and one of it is a lot of back-end stuff that'll make it more efficient. So that's less staff time, which means less budget in terms of things we'd have to find money to cover. I'd also say if you haven't been on any other city's webpage, go out and look around and see what else is out there. I frequently go out and look at other cities' web pages just because I'm trying to find a contact for a council member that I'm reaching out to. And I've noticed that ours is kind of built along those same lines, meaning there's a consultant out there selling this level of web page service to municipalities. So it's like anything. This is the generational web page for cities or municipalities in a sense. And I agree that the 3 video things are a little bit like, okay, can we move beyond that sort of thing? And I think we will eventually to where it stops. But at the same time, I love the hover and click, and you can get to things a lot faster than you used to be able to, and it's less cumbersome in the back end.
Someone else?
Sure, I'll be brief because I think a lot of the comments have already been said, but I do believe that it is new and improved. I know change is hard when we go from an old website to something that's different that people aren't used to using, but I do believe once we work out all the different things that, search engine and whatnot, and refine things, it's going to be a more user-friendly experience. It's going to be more intuitive, and you're going to be able to get the information you need quickly, which is why we have the website. So, yes, I'm excited that we did it, and it was much needed. Thank you.
Doesn't Mr. Myers have a microphone? Oh, no, the other Hank has the microphone.
I just wanted to do a quick pitch for the Your Redmond app, because the website integrates the customer service part of the Your Redmond app into it really well. And you, on the mobile devices, you can download Your Redmond app, and you can report potholes or things you notice that are wrong, that you think need to be addressed, signs that are knocked over or whatever.
Requests for services.
Yeah,
yes.
there's all sorts of categories in there. Do you want to say?
So this next question has a right answer, actually, and I will stop once I get the first right answer, because after that, it doesn't matter. The question is, where do you get those chocolate thumbprint cookies from? I know are you raising your hand? Who's, okay, Ms. Bernie?
I'm pretty sure it's Hoffman's.
Is Hoffman's Bakery in Cleveland.
And they have really cute Cinco de Mayo cookies, because they're right across the street from the downtown park, and they're really cute. And if you like sugar cookies with colorful sprinkles, that is the place to go.
Is there somebody from
No, but they're really good. They're really good.
But that would be good marketing, wouldn't it?
We have great bakeries in Redmond. There are a lot of other ones as well. They just happen to have those really cute Cinco de Mayo cookies.
Bakeries, breweries, things that start with B. And burger joints.
And burger joints, yeah.
There you go. Thank you for hosting this. I live next to Nike Park and appreciate the trails there. At one point, I heard there had been a plan to connect the trails to Hartman Park, but I still haven't seen anything come of that. Is this still possible? Is it likely that much of the green belt that surrounds Nike Park might become developed for housing instead of for parks and nature? And I think it says, it's you. Okay, and so the person signed, but part of this is unity if they want. So you have the
I'll answer
microphone?
part of it. No, that's a green space. It's not going to be developed. It's parkland. It's trail land. Oh, okay. Well, there's a whole trail network that we have planned out, and so it really is a matter of funding for trail connections. And I'm sorry, I'm not completely familiar with how Nike connects to Hartman, but it gets pretty close, I think. It's not quite there. So a few years ago, we did what's called the park plan, and part of it was it mapped out all the trails in the city and where the funding goes and how we prioritize trails. And so I don't have the answer for you where that piece of the trail is prioritized in there. But like that great neighborhood, there we have trails like that all over the city that are just missing these little small pieces. Sometimes it has to do with someone owns the property and we can't cross it. Sometimes it has to do with it's just not used as much, and there's maybe like a little goat trail already, but not a real trail. So we have that. Fortunately, we live in a really beautiful city where there's those kinds of opportunities, but also, unfortunately, there's so many of them that I couldn't tell you where it is on the level of priority. But if you want to get back to me, or the staff,
We have the
probably
connect-
is. I was
we have
going to
the
say the
contact.
staff probably can get back to you on like where that lies in all of that.
Jill, do you want to come up? You want to come take this one?
So I'm
Okay.
going to repeat in case you couldn't hear that. Ms. Smith said that all the questions that are asked get posted on is it redmond.gov/conversations. And so any of the questions that are asked and answered, you'll be able to find the information there so you don't have to take notes.
Go ahead. Whoever has the microphone. There you go.
I want to make a comment on the broader question. I think connecting our trails should be a priority, because I think that really creates that connected community, and that creates what we're looking for, which are people walking, biking, increases our mobility as well as our recreation. So I'm not answering your specific question, and I don't know about where we can build houses and that. I'll leave that for someone else to answer. But the idea and the vision that you described about connecting our trails, especially to larger trails, is a good one. So thank you.
And I believe most of those trees are owned by either the city or the federal government. So by the time the federal government acts, I'm going to read this one and answer it, I think. A person that the city council is aware of is being evicted from transitional housing and will become homeless with her 4 young kids, even though she did not commit a crime, but rather because she broke an unconstitutional rule that HopeLink has. The transitional housing nonprofit receives funds from the city. Will someone on the city council work with the woman and HopeLink to avoid this family from becoming homeless? First of all, say this is factually not accurate. Second of all, the city is working with HopeLink to place this family into housing. And 3, there's a lot more to this. It's private. It'd be like someone reading your health record on stage that can't be shared. Yes, it is. The true part is a family is being evicted, and they are being rehoused in another housing source that would maybe fit their needs better. And I think HopeLink is doing a wonderful job of managing that, but I don't think any more should be said on that topic. Okay, Mr. Copeland? That was your handwriting. Is the amphitheater in downtown Park going to be used? Contracted out, city concerns. I think we kind of answered that, but David, you look like you have something to say.
I know that it will be used. It's just events have to, they have to plan and utilize the equipment that we have in the park. So it's a matter of coordination and sometimes they'll bring in their own equipment. It's a place for a band to set up and play. So yeah, I mean we'll be using it in 2 weeks. So come on.
Yeah, I would say the request to use the park once we opened it came in so quick and so fast that staff wasn't really ready to process them. We are now in a better position.
I actually have witnessed people like during the day when it's not scheduled for use, to people who have like played music up there just on their own because it's a beautiful space. So it's if it's open, it's someone plays the violin, they could hang out there and play the violin. I don't think anyone would be that upset about that, but it also gets rented out, just like anything else in the city in our parks.
Yes, we do receive income from the rentals. No, something else. Okay. Any other? All right. Moving on. Is downtown Park going to host more events? And I think we've answered that one fairly thoroughly, and you're just going to see that number keep going up. Violent crime has gone up 267% over the last 6 years. That is factually incorrect. Well, it's picking certain statistics and twisting them. Are you aware of that? Well, I know I'm aware of the twisted statistics, Mr. Copen. What is the city going to do about the dramatic increase in violent crime? Well, as you know, statistics, damn lies and statistics. If you have 2 people shot in a year and 3 in the next, you have a 33% increase in crime. So 50%. See, I can't even do math on the stage here. So Mr. Fields seems to have his hands up. Go ahead.
So I'm just going to go to the question of what are we going to do, and I am the chair of the Public Safety Committee. We all council members meet regularly with our police chief and our fire chief and members of their staff, and we get very regular statistics about how we're doing with crime. And it's something that I actually have pushed to make sure that we get good information because our city is growing and it's changing. I'm also interested in traffic incidents and that kind of stuff. overall public safety. And I think that we are, I don't think that we're lax in this. I think that we're doing what we can. I think we have a good police department, and I would be interested in those distorted statistics and sort of see what's underneath them. But my point is that we, on a very regular basis, review those kinds of statistics for Redmond.
Mr. Carson.
So this is actually, it's not exactly the statistics being twisted as much as it is the whole framework of how they're reported has changed. It used to be that the most egregious of the crimes would be the only one that was actually reported in the statistics. So for instance, if you had a rape and a murder, only the murder would be actually reported through the FBI. Now what's happened is they've changed the whole thing, so each crime is actually reported, which will have that effect of, as it's kind of a new normal in terms of you're seeing all of those crimes being reported instead of just the most heinous of the how many ever were committed. So you will see, and that's only been over the last 10 years that this has changed. And I've been the public safety chair a couple of times, and during one of my tenures on the as chair is when we switched over to that reporting. So you will see it looking like there's more crime, but in fact, it's because the reporting was so bad, the system was so bad before, and now they're reporting everything that actually is happening. So that is where you will see some changes in what looks like increasing crime when it's just not.
Yeah, it changed about 2014, 2015. Yeah. Actually, the crime in Redmond that occurs that we keep a tighter eye on because is theft and robbery. And Redmond is known as a wealthy place and having good gadgets, good cars, good stuff. I'd say we kind of peaked in 2013, 2014, people stealing Amazon deliveries and break-ins, particularly in North Redmond. That crime has a greater effect on the general population of Redmond. The violent crimes that were talked about the numbers are very, very low. Redmond's a very safe place, and compared to any other city, we're extremely low. Mr. Margison.
You know, one of the things that we have the pleasure of doing as council members every year is going out on National Night Out with the police and fire and a whole host of different groups of folks and visiting with neighborhoods. And the most common story told by, and I've been in, at parties when a police representative is there, is the little robberies that we're talking about. They're not so little, but the robberies that we're talking about, car prowls mostly, are targets of opportunity, right? You have somebody running around checking door handles to see who didn't lock their car. And in my neighborhood, we had 2 or 3 cars broken into, and every one of them said, "Oh yeah, I forgot to lock my door." So that's what you're running into. And because Redmond is known as a fairly wealthy community, folks come in, or maybe they live here, who knows? Until we find them, we're not going to know exactly what their location is. But they'll go around and they'll look for the low-hanging fruit. And the low-hanging fruit is an unlocked car. So that and putting things out of vision, because I remember many years ago, one of my parents on my soccer team had their car broken into at Marymore Park, and we said, "What'd they steal?" "Well, my handbag." "Well, where was it sitting?" "On the front seat." So that, smash and grab is a fairly common thing in a lot of parking lots. So, being a smart, resident is always a good thing as well.
So car thieves and thefts, or car theft and these kind of crimes were kind of average with the rest of the East Side. It is generally, it's definitely lower than the state average. But I had another point about it that I slipped. So while I think of that, I will turn to Councilmember Anderson.
Sure. I think the question in this was, what are we going to do about it? And just to kind of keep this idea of Redmond as a safe place with our top-notch police department, is I believe we're going to come back and ask you to extend the public safety levy so that we can continue that high performance. So, in general, we will also be continuing National Night Out and, making sure that we keep everybody safe.
Great point. Jill, were there any additional cards that came in? I will, okay, Pam.
I have two questions. Is it possible to get more police presence on Redmond, Woodinville Road? I see cars going about 55, 60 miles an hour on the way to work, and it can be darn right scary. And then my second question is if I have issue with the website, who would I talk to about it, implementing a change?
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, I was talking to one of our motorcycle officers, David, and I said, David, you've done wonders in improving my driving habits. And he said, how is that, Hank? And I said, because you're out there. We have an increased enforcement emphasis now. And I said, David, I see all of your people out there, and my speed is going down and my gas mileage is going up, so thank you very much. So I think enforcement is one of the issues, and I think if you, particularly along Westlake Sammamish and in the city, you will see a lot more patrol officers, including unmarked cars, where they kind of coordinate what's happening among all the motorcycle officers. So there is an increased enforcement going on now.
And I would just say about the website that you can either use the app, the Your Redmond app. There's actually a website item, or if you go to the website and you go to the customer service app or applet inside the site, you can specify that the website, and you can. In fact, I did one. Okay, so yeah, and you can always email mayorcouncil@redmond.gov if you have something like that as well.
And part of if you're concerned about speeding on a certain segment of road, you can send an email to us or to the mayor, and the police officers, the police department's pretty responsive. If you notice some really dangerous behavior, they will kind of set up shop in that area for a while. I noticed there were some complaints about near the schools, people going a little too fast, and I noticed over the last few weeks they've been kind of hanging out there making sure people, they don't just do it one day, they do it over time so that people realize they're really watching them and making sure they're slowing down. So I would offer that to you. I think you can also go through the My Redmond app or send us an email, either way, but that's usually one of the better ways to get a concern like that known. And I will say that for a lot of things, if you are concerned about something, I would suggest going through the My Redmond app or emailing Your Redmond app, or emailing customer service or mayor council. If you if you have a concern and you put it on Facebook or social media, the city doesn't necessarily see that, and that's not really a direct route to go. So you can share that with your friends as well. Coming directly to us or the city is really the best route.
Mr. Fields.
So Councilmember Bernie gave part of that answer that I was going to give. So recently,
Yeah, Miss Bernie wasn't called upon, so she was.
I know. I noticed that. So recently, we got an email from someone whose wife was hit in a crosswalk a year ago, and he pointed out that there was some tree branches that were blocking an intersection, and him and his daughter almost got hit. So what I've asked the chief police to do is sort of think about how we can you need the microphone? Perfect. How we can maybe find, I'm going to combine your two questions, website and public safety. And if we can maybe think in terms of how we could actually collect that data and organize that data where we get that input from residents and people who are experiencing safety issues, and maybe make a section of our website where we can accumulate and then actually do analysis on those kind of things. Because the police, I'm not saying they like to give tickets, but they like to create safety. I've done ride-alongs with the police, and they do go to the trouble areas, but it's helpful for them to know where those trouble areas are. So your input, your participation is essential to better government. So thank you.
And I would just add, time of day is also important to know. It sounds like it's in the morning.
It's like 6:45.
Yeah.
And it may be the street before 4:30.
Yeah. Yeah. And so early in the morning, there's not many cars, and so you got folks that feel like, hey, it's Indy 500, I can go as fast as I want, as opposed to, say, at 9 o'clock or 9:15 or 9:30, you're stacked up, or the other direction. Yeah. 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 So it's important to note the time of day, because then that's how we can send the traffic enforcement out, and they can patrol that area. So thank you.
We had another question from the audience.
Oh, it's not so much a question, but just kind of an addition to the discussion about the traffic. We've had an area in my neighborhood where we had problems with people going too fast, and signs were put up that automatically remind people of how fast they're going. And it's amazing, you can be going a lot faster than you think you are, and these are wonderful reminders that make change. It's sometimes slow, but it makes change, and it doesn't require the police to sit there and monitor this constantly. So that really can be, in some cases, an effective situation. In others, well, no.
Yes, we have another question. Excuse me, I'm not as talented on my feet as I used to be.
Yeah. The Comprehensive Transportation Plan has for 30 years shown an extension of 161st Avenue Northeast through to continue through and connect with Redmond Woodinville Road up to the north. It's been on the plan for roughly 30 years. Is there any current discussion about progressing that extension of 161st?
Mr. Margerson, excuse me.
Yes, actually, yes, there is. In fact, during our budget session, we put money into studying basically a concept plan, essentially, how we would go about doing. Because if you're familiar with that area, which I'm sure you are, it's not the easiest of terrain to traverse to get up that hill and connect with Redwood Road. And I will say, going back 13, 14 years, so that's been my experience with it. When I was on the Education Hill Citizens Advisory Committee, that was one of the things that we advocated that the city not drop in terms of taking that line off the map. We knew there wasn't money in it to build it yet, but we didn't want to remove it from the map, and so we fought to keep it on the map, and the city council at the time, and I think it was 2007, kept it on the map. And so now this council has, last year in our budget, put money towards studying how we would do an alignment, in a sense.
That's Mr. Myers.
Thank you. And I'm familiar with that as well, because I've lived here for 42 years, and I remember when the development went in where the extension of 160th was proposed. And I have to say, it's partly due to the nature of the project. I live in the south end of the city, and I take West Lake Sammamish Parkway through Bellevue quite a bit. It is probably one of the worst roads you'll ever look at, but in order to make it better, it's very, very expensive. So every year the Bellevue Council says, well, where are we going to put our money? And they say, oh my God, we don't have enough money to do that. So I think there's some of that in this situation. So we really, my proposal is we start buying property, we start making a commitment, not simply to plan. We have an elephant graveyard of plans, of parks and roads and all sorts of things. And I think it's really time for us to act and go out and start doing something.
Other further comments? Okay. Oh, excuse me, Councilmember Anderson.
Sure. That's about right for the road timing. It takes about 30 years to build a road right about now, so especially a new road in an urban area. So it sounds like we're kind of on schedule in terms of things are going. And it's it's a pretty good process to keep studying it to make sure we're doing it right. So looking forward to that.
And she is a road expert, so I'll take her word on that.
Oh, who did?
So we actually, Kirkland just built 4 years ago their first road in 95 years as a new extension. So that is how much time it sometimes takes to make those connections in a city. So we're doing better than Kirkland, right? Sorry to Mr. Pascal. I think he's going to be a little bit. It's now a competition, of course. So
It's always been a competition. West Redmond, yes.
Well, you segued into my question very, very nicely. Thank you very much for laying the plan. Kirkland has a very supportive system with their neighborhood associations. They have over 20 neighborhood associations represented on their website. They have a specific liaison that works with all of their neighborhood associations. And I'm wondering, as the leader of Education Hill Neighborhood Association, how the city plans on encouraging and supporting other neighborhood associations and working that in as communication and citizenry and civic action for the city.
Thank you. We'll just start the far right. Oh, we'll start here. Mr. Fields has the microphone in his hands already. Mr. Myers is on the far right. Yes.
No comments necessary. I just wanted to, and while Mr. Fields figures out how to run the microphone, I will say I live in the south end of the city, right next to Bellevue. And in fact, there's a little strip of Redmond that is inside the Bellevue School District, which is where my kids went to school. And I have to say that in Bellevue, they also have a very, very active community associations. And I have seen several issues that were very divisive on the ballot, and the city was going to do something, and the neighborhood associations came in and presented a case and were able to control that. So I think we need to hear from the voices of our public, not in the form of a survey, not in the form of, a count on the internet or something, but we want to hear the passion. We want to hear the arguments. We want to go deeper than that, and the community associations are really a great way to do that. I support your position.
Mr. Fields.
So from the far left, so I had an opportunity to sit down with Ms. Norman and actually ask her a series of questions on her experiences in doing this. And I live on Education Hill and have complete respect and admiration for what she does. I think that it's a wonderful thing. I think it could be better, and she would admit that. And I think that's something that the city should support. So I don't know what the city has in mind about this. I know what I would advocate for and what I will try to encourage as a city council member. My plan is to take the information and the concepts that we got and gathered together and actually try to encourage other neighborhood groups or neighborhood leaders to replicate and what Paige is doing. I think it's a tremendous service, and I think that if the city found a way to encourage it and even potentially fund it, I think we would get a lot more community support for what we do. So I'm a big fan of it. I am familiar with what they do in Kirkland. I actually have a planned meeting with, I can't remember exactly what their name is, Bridal Trails something, and I'm going to meet with them in June to understand their experiences better. So I can't speak for the other council members, I can't speak for the mayor, I can't speak for city staff, but I think it's great what you do, and I would like to see more of it around our city.
Mr. Carson. Oh, you didn't have, okay. Councilmember Potier.
Thank you. I'm also in support of this idea. I feel like being a resident on Education Hill, we are very organized. We've got the Edna Association, we have various Facebook groups, but I don't hear from, maybe downtown Redmond residents or Overlake, residents, and I know that they have a voice. So I think if we can encourage those groups to be more active and, set up a structure where we can check in regularly, I think that would be giving a lot of voices to issues that we're not hearing about right now. So I think that's an important priority.
Others? Yes, let me come around to you. Yeah, why don't you meet me halfway? I appreciate that.
Hi, I'm a member of the 48th Legislative District, and we recently wanted to adopt part of a road to, take it on, clean up litter, and we discovered that in our LD, the only road we could adopt was in Kirkland because Redmond does not have this program. I was wondering if this would be a program that we would be looking into in the near future.
Well, we do have this program.
Or at least we used to. I
No,
thought
we still do.
do.
So I'm a member of Redmond Kiwanis, and we actually do the Redmond Central Connector. But before that, we had 1/16th that we sponsored for litter pickup. So we definitely do have it. I don't know the roads necessarily that are subject to it. They tend to be arterials. They're not, like we wouldn't do my cul-de-sac or anything like that. But well, yeah, we obviously, yeah. But I mean, the ones that we adopt, the city sets up for adoption, like 1/16th was, and that's obviously in the 45th. But I would imagine that 1/48th. But the problem is that it goes into the 45th, so it kind of, so sections of it. I think there must be roads that certainly are there. Westlake Sammamish Parkway would be one that I don't think we have adopted out yet. So.
Ms. Anderson, then Mr. Myers.
Sure. I just was wondering if it's a baby road or maybe an older, if you want to adopt it. It's news to me that we have this program, but so I appreciate that. And being a part of the 48th myself, I'd be happy to help you figure that out.
Yeah, is it an orphan road? And you haven't seen a litter picker-upper like David Carson anywhere. I made the mistake one time when we were doing 1/16th of being paired with him, and he was, I think he was lost down in some gullies and things. Well, so no, it's a very good program, and also I have to say the city gives you great support. They give us these wonderful little grabbers. They give us the bags. They come down and they pick it up. So I will find out, if the staff doesn't, who arranges that. Because we really do appreciate your offer.
So Jill, if you can give her a card and get her contact information, we'll get you an answer. That'd be good.
I've been blessed with really good eyesight, which is why I see little pieces of wrappers everywhere.
Stand up.
Just real quick question. Today I've raised a few questions and was personally attacked by the mayor, so thank you very much, Mayor. Since this is a community conference where you want community to give their input, how do you take it that when the mayor attacks people personally, when they raise issues, do you think that's appropriate? Thank you.
Mr. Fields.
I actually think that the mayor made a mistake in calling out your name on the question. So I wish he hadn't have done that.
Someone else's hand up?
Well, I was just going to say that I think making sure that the facts are accurate is laudable. It's difficult because sometimes the facts are difficult to discern.
Well, Mr. Carson has the microphone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like. I'm a go along, get along kind of guy. So I prefer a more congenial situation. So, you can't control what other people say, though. So,
I have to say, in my experience, and I've been practicing regulatory law for 47 years, and I've had a lot of experience in politics in this area and others. And what is the great thing about well-behaved women never accomplish things? Exactly, make history. So I think congeniality is nice, but other than, but not necessarily productive. Other than that, what he said was good.
Anyone else? Mr. Martin?
I just add there were several questions where I think the author was called out, at least this evening, and so I don't know that anybody was particularly singled out. There were some factual challenges brought forward, and that's okay.
Other questions? All right. Well then, it is now 7:43-ish. We're scheduled for this room till 8 o'clock, so we'll break up this part of the meeting and let you mix with the council members, and thank you very much
Thank you for
coming
coming.
out.